All right, all right, all right. You're listening to the We're Talking Football podcast. I'm Weston. With me, as always, my right-hand man, Lou. Lou, another week in the books. Here to discuss our Week 16 recap. But actually, it's been a very busy week for us here at the We're Talking Football podcast. Earlier this week, we were fortunate enough to be invited on with Jesse Naylor in the Last Second Sports podcast to discuss your favorite topic, the debacle presently known as the San Francisco 49ers. We have tonight's show, and then our weekly appearance on Sunday with Jason Aponte and his fantasy football show to give fantasy advice for your championship week. Like I said, busy week for us, but feels like it's going to be a lot of fun.
No. When you put it like that, this doesn't work. When you do what you love, you don't call it work. So it's just nice that we're getting ourselves out there exposed. I think we're going to do something a little different today. We're not going to really go over. I'm going to say, the previous games. We had an awful week this past week when it comes to our teams, and I don't think we really want to relive it in more of like a good versus bad type of thing. So, Weston, tell everyone what we're trying to do today.
Yeah, so before jumping into that, week 17, right around the corner. It's the first week without a Thursday night game as we get towards the home stretch of the season.
Sure. Yeah.
I like this. You know how I feel about Thursday night games. I'm usually over them after by like the second or third. Once my team plays in a Thursday night game, I realize how much I hate the Thursday
they're
night
just
game.
usually so bad because it's like bad teams that usually
Bad teams, lack of preparation.
sloppy football.
It's a grueling sport, so people get banged up on Sunday that can't necessarily suit up on Thursday. That would probably suit up have that game be the following Sunday. But the last thing I'll call out before I kind of describe what we're going to begin with here is some more teams have officially been eliminated, and the road to the playoffs for certain teams has become a little bit more clear. So an exciting 2 weeks here left on the schedule means that we'll get into our format will drastically change as we start to talk about playoff football. So we'll have to figure out what that looks like on the fly. But usually we do begin with our hometown takes. And this is where you and I spend, God knows, sometimes it goes 10 minutes, sometimes it goes a half hour talking about the previous week, who our teams hosted. We've already kind of exhausted the 49ers earlier this week, so I won't spend too much time there. But what we want to take away from this is I want to talk about the Chargers-Texans game.
Good, because I don't.
And I'll throw some things in there. The Chargers have a big game against the Broncos this week, so I want to more foreshadow what we expect to see this weekend versus kind of recapping what we saw last week. And I'll do the same for the 49ers, right? I'll quickly talk about the 49ers Titans, spend a little bit more time talking about the 49ers versus the Texans this week, implications there. So as we always do, Lou, begin with you. Dive right in. I'll chime in, but let's start, I guess, with a little bit of that recap on the Chargers-Texans game.
Yeah. So, Weston, let me ask you a question: are you a Seinfeld fan, or were you a Seinfeld fan?
I've seen enough to say that
Okay.
I've seen enough.
So, for the avid Seinfeld listeners, last week was the glorious holiday of Festivus, and if you follow our Instagram page at WTF Pod NFL, you will realize the joys of Festivus. But in tradition of Festivus begins the airing of grievances, and I got a lot of problems with the Chargers right now, and they're about to hear it, bro. They're about to hear it.
Got a lot of problems with you people.
The Chargers did an awful job at containing Arian Foster this past weekend. Oh no, wait a minute. That wasn't Arian Foster. That's Rex Burkhead.
Yes, it was.
Rex Burkhead. Are you kidding me? They allowed some guy who averages 195 rushing yards in his career per season, and they allowed him 149 yards and 2 touchdowns in the game, averaging 6.8 yards per carry. That is ridiculous. They couldn't stop the mighty attack of Rex Burkhead. Are you out of your friggin' mind? I don't want to hear the fact that the Chargers had a lot of players on COVID. Texans had 24 players, bro. 24 players. All their offensive linemen was not suited up. These were bums off the street, and they still were opening up the holes and parting the sea like Moses. It's ridiculous. They were going into this game. They were the master of their domain. They had their own, a playoff destiny that they in control. and they lost it. They lost to a 3-11 team that had nothing to play for.
Yeah.
That
It
is
was
ridiculously fun. And what even makes it more frustrating, if this was early in the season, it would have been frustrating, but it's the timing of this. You knew what was online. It was a clearer picture before you're just trusting the process. Now the process is here, and you're so close of achieving something, for the first time in a couple of years, the playoffs. And they completely they show up lifeless in Houston. There was no energy there, no effort, no leadership. Last week, I put so much praise on Coach Staley, even though they lost to the Chiefs, right? Even I stood by him, but this was inexcusable. He first of all, Eckler talking about there wasn't a lot of energy and effort, that some of the people were telling him about because all the leaders were, on COVID, right?
Yep.
How do you not get yourself up realizing what's on stake? They were just going through the motions and hoping their talent would be better than the Texans. This is all on them, and it's just extremely disappointing because what was looking to be promising now that it's somewhat in the hole. And now the majority of the blame, I say, goes to Staley, but he should get a lot of the blame. Some other blame should go to the general manager, Tom Telesco. And let me tell you why. How many times I made this joke? I love recycling jokes. If anyone knows about me, I will tell you a joke over and over again until you start laughing.
I'll laugh this time so I don't have to hear
Yeah,
it again.
okay, yes. do our listeners a favor, bro. He builds this team like a Madden roster that has no fatigue or injury settings turned off, like they're turned off. It's so top heavy. So whenever there's injury or COVID now, they're automatically depleted everywhere. And they're having guys that should not be playing right now. A bunch of practice squad players. So I think that's all I really wanted. Yeah.
I get it. Because you don't want to dive too deep in certain things because you can get in a rabbit hole here. The bottom line is, sum it up as frustration. Definitely a frustrating loss. I agree with you. Team probably came in on cruise control thinking like 3-win team. We should be able, we are talented enough regardless of who's out. And you mentioned, right? No Eckler, no Mike Williams, no Jalen Guyton, which seemed to look like it slowed the offense down.
Mm-hmm.
To me, no Bosa on the field was just evident, right? Like there really wasn't a pass rush when you sack a quarterback like Davis Mills with that offensive line only one time in the game. It's frustrating.
That is mind-boggling. That is mind-boggling.
Did Herbert have his best game? No, right? But like you also,
it's a second-year player.
Listen, I don't knock Justin Herbert.
I'm just saying that when people say that, there's going to be times where the team's eventually. Why can't they carry him from one game?
That's what I'm saying. Like there was nobody there that was. I shouldn't say nobody, but the rest of the team looked like they were on cruise control. I do think there was a bright spot, and I think Justin Jackson was that. Right?
He's always good, but unfortunately this won't last.
Yeah,
he gets hurt so much.
You know what though? That was a hell of a game. I think it was so much of a hell of a game, Lou, that even when Eckler comes off this COVID list, i.e. this week, you can't take this guy out of the game plan, right? Like
he gets hurt next. You're right.
I mean, we'll run him until he gets hurt, right? Like, and then you have some depth, right?
He has good vision. He has good.
He's a good football player, but injuries, when we say this all the time, right? Like availability is the best ability, yada yada yada. But I do think he was a bright spot. But what this game really, like, I know you mentioned like TT being an issue, right? Some of the coaching issues, but to me, like. And I try to keep things like real simple, and this goes back to the eye test for me. They just weren't able to stop the run, like period, point blank. I think they gave up like 189, 190 total yards rushing, but when it was all happening was the most perplexing, right? So this was particularly in the fourth quarter when the Chargers needed a couple more offensive possessions to try to put points on the board when Herbert was getting a little bit of a groove, but they were able just to play keep away. Like they just played keep away. And they have like an 8 or 9 minute drive somewhere in that fourth quarter. And you mentioned, Rex Burkhead doing his best Jonathan Taylor impression
Dude,
out there this
he
year. It
averages
was
190.
unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, he averages 195 yards a year rushing.
Yeah. It was frustrating. Like, even as a I think I'm a part Chargers fan now at this point, spending so much time watching them
Wow.
and liking some guys on that team. I'm allowed to root for other teams, and maybe I'm rooting for you, but I'm always rooting to prove my point that Herbert was the cream of the crop in that quarterback class, because I pounded the table on that. But it was frustrating to watch, right? Because it was a winnable game. Like, I know the score says it was a 2-possession game, but like, it was a winnable game had a few things gone differently in a game. Again, if you surveyed the 46 that they did dress for the game that were available, they probably would have told, but you say Eckler said there was no urgency, no energy, no anything like that, because they probably just felt like they didn't even need it. And this is where I feel the need to remind everyone that this is still the NFL. The other team gets paid to play too. They have a salary cap they get to operate within that looks just like your salary cap.
They're
And they
either
have players on the team.
they're fighting for next year's roster spot. They're fighting for next year free
Next
agency.
paycheck, whatever it is. Like, these guys get, and coaches too. This is their livelihood, right? So, like, when you don't take the opportunity to get your team ready, I assure you the other team is taking the opportunity to get themselves ready. So if you're done with that recap.
Oh, I'm done.
Big game this week, divisional game, playoffs on the line here. I think you guys are sitting in 7 right now. So can't afford to lose a game right now.
We're not.
So you're
like
8 right now.
We're 8 or 9.
So you can't afford to lose. Have to win, and you need help throughout.
Yeah, a little bit. It's going to be a little challenging, but it's not impossible. So the Chargers played the Denver Broncos this past weekend, and we talked about this when the Niners were playing the Seahawks, that there are some teams, especially within your own division, that just play you harder, and they just have your number. I think it's fair for me to say the Seahawks are your Moby Dick, right?
So fair of you to say. It's
okay.
unquestionable.
Well, the Chargers, it's the Denver Broncos. They're 5-16 in their last 21 matchups against Denver. Now, if you want to look more recently, like with Justin Herbert, his stats, not stats, but his record against him, he's 1-2 over the last 3 meetings. So he's looking to get to 500. Denver kind of gives Herbert's fits playing with him the last 3 matchups. His performance has been mediocre. He's 78 for 120, 834 yards. That comes out to about like 278 yards per game. But it's his touchdown interception ratio that's really a little out of whack. It's 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Overall, his quarterback rating is 88. Last time they met back in week 12, Denver held the Chargers 13 points, and they defeated LA 28-13. So that was a smackdown for a team that scored. If you're holding the Chargers 13 points, that seldom does that happen.
You're going to win the game.
You're going to win the game. There is no secret how the Broncos constructed their team and their defense. They're in the AFC West. The AFC West is a bunch of high-flying teams, pass-heavy teams. So what they do the antithesis and create a good defense, especially in the back end. So that's their strength. The Denver Broncos is their passing defense. Denver is ranked 4th in completion percentage, allowing only 60% for this year. They're ranked 6th in total passing yards, with about 210 yards per game. Think about that. Look at the teams that Denver plays: Chiefs, Raiders, Chargers, twice a year, and they're only giving up 200. And so within that, they're only giving 210 yards per game. They're also 4th in quarterback rating allowed, 82.3. It's easy to see why Denver now has Los Angeles like their number, because basically the Chargers' strength is their passing game, and Denver's is their secondary. So you have to run the ball on Denver. They're allowing 4.4 yards per carry. They're right in the middle of the pack when 13-15 come in rushing defense. I think that's what's going to take to win the game for the Chargers, is to run this ball. What you're ultimately doing too, don't forget, Brandon Staley and Vic Fangio play the same type of defense. And basically, to get those safeties to move up, you're going to have to run the ball and make them play the run so that those big plays can happen later on down the field. Because if you're not, they didn't when the last time they played, they didn't pass rush the middle. They didn't blitz at all. No. And this was a blitz heavy team going into week 12, the Broncos. So they only blitzed 4 times. So they basically just sat back in coverage and said, "Hey, can Herbert beat us?" And he couldn't. So the Chargers are gonna have to run that ball, get the safeties up, do the deep shots down the field.
Yeah, they not only do they need to run the ball, they need to do more than just make it look like they're trying to run the
Yeah.
ball. Like they need to force the issue. I have here in my notes the formula to win here is a minimum 35 rushing attempts. Minimum.
Remember, the last 3 weeks I've been saying this. The Chargers look better when they rush. They look more efficient when they rush. Like I said, about maybe 34 to 38. That's a little aggressive. I'm going to say about 30 to 34 more, 30 to 40 times, 30 to 34 times a game. That's when they look the most efficient. Because
But I think with Eckler back, Jackson coming off the game that he just came off of, have to do it. Have to force the issue. You said everything that I wanted to say is Denver's built to stop you in the air, and it's based on who they play in their division and where the majority of their games are. And, Vic Fangio, say what you might say about him as a head coach, he's a damn good defensive coach, a damn good. And you better believe these guys are going to be prepared. And just like you said, they didn't blitz you in week 12. I expect the unexpected. They're going to come after you this week. Like they're just
maybe a bunch of zone blitzes,
dude, and but they're still going to have people in coverage, right? And they're still, even if they have to put their corners out on an island, their corners are pretty good. You got Simmons rolling around in that backfield, like he's pretty scary and he covers a lot of ground. So you have to run the football. And to me, the winning formula here is very simple for the Chargers. You have to run the football. You have to limit the turnovers. Stop the run because Drew Lock,
you can say that
every game, dude. I don't know why this is not like
they have been better as of late though. Last week I said they've held a bunch of talented runners under 100 yards and under 4 yards per carry, but it's like they got really lazy this past week and show their old ugly head there.
No, listen, you always hate to talk about like one player, but no Joey Bosa on that defensive line is like an issue, right? Like the attention that he commands and like frees up for like think about like zone scheme runs, right? Like you're blocking an area, you're not necessarily blocking a man, but when you have to account for somebody like him, that's one less person blocking in an area that might actually provide for a one-on-one matchup for a D lineman, and even if you win it 30% of the time in those scenarios, like those are tackles for a loss, those are long third downs, right? That those change the complexion of the game. And I know, like I said, very simple formula, right? Run the football, stop the run, limit the turnovers. But if you really look at it, Drew Lock is not beating your team in the air.
Bro,
he's not. He's not.
All right, time out. Oh, not in the air. He still can beat them. We said the same thing about Bridgewater, and they're not losing to a Bridgewater-led Broncos team, and they did.
Drew Lock is not Teddy Bridgewater,
and Teddy Bridgewater ain't shit. So what does that tell you?
Nah, he's still an NFL quarterback, right? Like they're still.
Yeah.
I guess you could say the same about Drew Lock. But when all said and done, they saw the tape last week, just like we all saw the tape last week, and their running back committee is a little bit stronger than Houston's is. They're coming at you on the ground and they're going to smash that ball in between.
No, yeah. So first of all, they have to protect Locke first and foremost. And secondly, they didn't run the ball against the Raiders, the Broncos. They ran it like, I want to say it was like,
they struggled to run the football, but that game was weird.
It was only 13 attempts, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. That's not the Broncos usually it's like 17-17 for Gordon and
they lost the football game. And they lost the football game, right?
So you think there's going to be an emphasis on running the ball from the Broncos?
If I look at what Houston just did to you, and I look at who I have in my backfield, you're damn right. I just said the Chargers need to run the ball 35 times. You better believe the Denver Broncos are going to run the ball minimum 30 times this game. Minimum. You heard it. Minimum 30 times. All right. Are you done with?
I'm done, yeah.
All right. We'll talk about winners or losers in a little while of this week. So, all right. So we're shifting gears. 49ers played the Titans last week. I'm honestly just flat out tired of talking about this game, watching this game. Let me summarize this. It hurt, and it hurt really bad. Here's the 30,000-foot view of this game. 49ers had every opportunity to make this somewhere between a 17 and a 24-0 game before the half. The Titans offense was actually non-existent, and the 49ers D had a hell of a scheme drawn up, but you knew it wouldn't last forever. Teams adjust. The Titans did that in the second half, and then all of a sudden, A.J. Brown wakes up, right? Tannehill's completing some passes. They still didn't run the ball on us. Like, they didn't have a running attack, but like we talked about earlier this week, Lou, with Jesse on his show, the glaring issue and the talk of the town right now is with Jimmy, with number 10. Now we actually know that he hurt himself in that game and played through it, but the struggles came long before that injury. Missed throws to open receivers, forced throws to non-open receivers, on and on and on. I don't want to belabor any of this. I talked about how our cornerbacks are liabilities right now, even when D'Amico's in his bag hiding those deficiencies for halves. He did this against Cincinnati the previous week where it didn't, or the week prior to Atlanta where Cincinnati like literally didn't wake up till like 7 or 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter and then started getting into their bag a little bit. I wish I saw more from my Bosa. He just didn't show up in the stat column, but we still had a pass rush. Like we still sacked Tannehill 4 times.
Yeah.
We still got to the quarterback and got in his face, especially in the first half. But I don't want to spend any more time on that either. Like I'm literally over this game. Here's the quality of a good football team. It is one that steps on the throat of a bully when they have a chance. I thought we were that team when we throttled the LA Rams. Thought we were that team. But we just weren't able to do it. Like this, dude, Lou, this game should have been over before the half.
Yeah.
It would have required an utter collapse in the second half if we don't miss Juszczyk wide open, if we don't force the ball to a not even close to open George Kittle, where even if we kick a field goal there, you're talking about 13. The juice touchdown should have been touchdown pass. That makes it 20-0, right? Like if you're just doing random things. And the way Tennessee looked in the first half, they would think there was no chance of revitalizing that. You could sit in a shell all second half and just force them to eat clock. But that's it. Tennessee did nothing impressive. They certainly didn't feel and look like that 10-5 team.
Can I tell you what they did do impressive, though?
They adjusted. That's what they did to me. Coaching.
Third down, man. Tannehill, I think, converted 9 third and longs. That's incredible.
All in the second half, dude. They didn't move the ball in the first half of that football game. So you're right. Third down, big spotlight for them, and that's where they convert third downs on offense, can't get off the field on third down in defense. That's a problem, right?
That's maddening when you're so good on first and second down.
And third and longs, not even just like 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4. Like these were 3rd and 8 pluses that they converted on. It was maddening, dude. It was so frustrating. But again, outside of the adjustments that they made, this to me felt more like a 49er loss than it did a Tennessee Titan win. They didn't feel like the 10-5 team that their record says they are after the game. This one hurts, and it could literally be the one that got away in the one game that may, in fact, at this point in the season, just keep you out of the playoffs, depending on how things shake out over the next 2 weeks. So super frustrating game, super, super frustrating game. And what made it worse was that it was a Thursday night game. So having to
right before Christmas.
Sit through literally right before Christmas, and then have to sit through the weekend and just stew on that as you're watching other teams play. Like that was a kick in the balls. Like it sucked. It sucked.
A tough week last week. We got coal in our stocking. So.
We sure did. I promise I'll be on my best behavior in 2022. So one more day to misbehave. And we'll count tonight as misbehavior as well. But now it's on to the Texans. Lou, you joke that you say jokes until people laugh and then they don't go away. Well, you mock me for this every week, and you did it earlier this week. But this time,
the biggest game of the year for this
time.
Must-win game.
I am dead serious. They have to win. There's Lou, you lose this game. There's literally no other way around it than to come out and say they have to win this game. They don't even control their own destiny. So even if they win out, there's things that can happen that keep them out of the playoffs. So it's going to require help along the way, but it starts with a W against Houston. Like we saw firsthand what they did last weekend, the Texans. So let's keep this all in perspective. The 49ers, well, before I do that, they have to I don't want to hear the shit about we own the Rams when we talk about these Big Brothers things. I think earlier in the season on a Monday night, coming to San Francisco or Santa Clara, totally different scenario than this late in the season with a rolling Rams team going into LA, where they're trying to bid up the ladder and get a higher seed and play a lesser opponent in the playoffs. I'm not subscribing to that. We're just going to roll into LA and beat up on them like we have the last 5 times. I don't believe that to be the case. So they, again, have to win this game. We saw firsthand what Houston did to you folks last week, right? So keeping everything in perspective, the 49ers have to stop the run. While I think this individual is a capable player, I do not believe Davis Mills is going to win any games on his own right now. When the Texans are going to win, it's going to be complimentary football, which means they're going to have to run the rock. But the good news is the 49ers are actually pretty stout against the run and have been all season. So hopefully that remains true, right? Like watch fucking Burkhead go for like two in the nickel and like just 3 touchdowns this week. I'll literally kill myself. But I think like if I'm in the film room, if I'm in the coaches meetings, I'm devising literally the exact same game plan I did against the Titans. I think these teams are built eerily similar. Like to me, Ryan Tannehill doesn't win football games. Like everybody around him needs to play well, except the difference being this week, like have to take advantage of your opportunities on the offense. And speaking of offense, we know the talk right now is Jimmy or is Trey starting this game? And I know you're going to have some commentary here in a minute, so let me get something out before you jump in. You're well-versed on my feelings on this subject at this point in time. I just don't see how a struggling quarterback with a UCL tear that actually right here, right, the ligament right in here that allows you to grip anything, let alone a football for control, strip sacks, throwing the ball, whatever it is, should even start this game, even if he says he's able to go. I don't care. Like the game is too important. But here are the facts, Lou. I don't give a shit who starts this game. I don't. When all said and done, I'm still a 49ers fan, even though I'm here to debate their strategy. Like I said earlier about your game, this game, the formula is simple. They need to hand the ball off 35 times. Elijah Mitchell should be back. Jeff Wilson's healthy. Debo, all these guys need to touch the ball out of the backfield. If Trey plays, then it's an added bonus. Devise some RPO and let this man get on the move. We know he can. I've seen you design RPO with Jimmy, and I have no idea why that's even happening. Like, let that happen with Trey, and then we go from there. But if you don't win this game, 49er fans, forget about the 2021 playoffs. Because you're not going into you can't beat this team at home. You're not going into LA and beating that team either.
We were talking earlier about Kyle Shanahan and the fact that Kyle is trying to rush Jimmy G back in this game on Sunday. It's not good. And it could be, it's bad for could be either or now. 2 reasons why I think this is bad. Either A, Lance isn't progressing as he still likes, and he has trepidation putting him in the game. Or B, Kyle's just being too stubborn now with his love affair for Jimmy G. And that's showing tunnel vision. And I feel like that's towards when you start playing like that or coaching like that, I feel like that's probably the back 9 of your career for that organization. Like that's the start of the back 9.
Yeah. So I do think it's a combination of both, right? Like I'm the first to admit that Kyle is super stubborn. And listen, he's just signed like a friggin' 6-year extension. So he's going to have to fuck up for at least 2 or 3 more years before he is literally rode out of town.
That's what I'm saying. It's a start. This could be a start.
It could be the start. But this goes back to what we've always said. And we said this at the beginning of the season. And maybe there is truth to this. Maybe there is truth. Both things can be right. And both things don't necessarily have to be bad. And what I mean by that is maybe the truth still is that Jimmy gives them the better shot to win the football game. That could be true, right? What did we know about Trey when he was coming out? Huge upside, But did he play at the level that some of the previous quarterbacks played at? No, he didn't. He lost a year of football without playing. So we knew there was going to be a learning curve. And I think the 49ers' hope was that Trey would never have to see the field in year one because of those things. And if he didn't see the field, it was because Jimmy stayed healthy and we were competing and winning football games. And then the formula plays out the way. I know what you're saying, but I'm hear me loud and clear when I say this. If it is true that Trey is not progressing to Kyle Shanahan's liking, that doesn't scare me of like, oh my God, we drafted the wrong person. This kid's 21 years old. He's a rookie. I just talked about where he played football and how long it's been since he's played football. We knew things were going to happen. But I look around and look at the other quarterbacks that were drafted in this draft, and I look at Trevor Lawrence, and I look at Zach Wilson, I look at Justin Fields, and I look at Mac Jones over the last few weeks. Tell me which one of those is ready and progressing the way that you'd want. They're rookies. You just can't judge them with the same lens. So earlier this year, I said, I want Trey to play, right? I think I've specifically said it and demanded it after the loss against Indianapolis.
And I said no.
And you said no. But at that point, after losing 3 straight in the way that the team looked, it felt like to me time to mail in 2021. So now the best way to progress your quarterback, your rookie quarterback that you've invested in so much, is let him play. Because then the struggles and the kinks get ironed out on the field with nothing to lose. But if you're a head coach and you're competing for this playoff spot and you have a little bit of hesitancy or a little bit of doubt, is like now the best time to figure out what you got as a rookie. Maybe the injury to Jimmy forces that evaluation. So what I'm saying here is I'd still love to see Trey go out there, right? Like
He's going out there. He has to. There's no way. Physically, there's no way Jimmy G can play this game.
And then if the kid plays, he's going to get another shot. If it doesn't go well, Jimmy's going to get marched right back out against LA or in that first round of the playoffs. Like that could happen as well. So 49er fans, set your expectations. But if Trey plays well and looks like he's progressed a little bit and that equals a W, it might be him from there on out, depending upon how he wins the game. But what I'm saying to you, and I'm not to be redundant, is that's why I say both things can be right. And that Kyle is stubborn and that Trey maybe is not progressing. The big thing that I want to lean on is if Trey is not progressing, I'm okay with that. This is first season in the NFL. He's 21 years old. Jimmy's been healthy for the majority of the season with the practice regulations and things like COVID going around and the proper protocols you're going through. Like he's getting scout team reps. He's not getting first and second team reps with starting O and starting thing. It's just different. Like come next year, he'll get another off season. If by year 3, because he didn't play in year 1, if the narrative is he's still not progressing, that's when the issue arises to me. I'm not concerned about it at all in his rookie year.
Real quick, and then I guess unless you have anything else to say,
we'll move on. Then we can get on, yeah.
So it's not like it's Rodgers or Brady. Like an injured Rodgers will give you a better chance to win a game than Love, right? This is Jimmy G. Yeah. Almost,
a bottom 15 quarterback in the NFL.
He's
bottom 15.
Oh yeah, bottom 15. Okay, at least the top 15. I mean, what are we talking about here? Like, why? So you're basically saying potentially injured Jimmy G is better than your first round draft pick that's been with your team now for almost for a while. Like, I mean, the first for this first season, like it's not the first week of the season. So how's an injured Jimmy G better than Trey Lance right now?
Okay, well, let me ask you this, just to put this into perspective, and we'll move on. We don't know what Trey is yet, right? Because we saw one game against the Cardinals where I thought he actually played pretty well. We saw a second half against the Seahawks where he looked really good, actually. But we haven't seen a lot of him. But if you're going into a must-win game right now.
They're playing the Texans, and I know the Texans beat us, but come on.
No, but like it's still you still have to win this football game, right? Like I'm telling you statistically they have to win this football game. So if you're going into a must-win game and you had to choose between an injured Jimmy G that tells you he can play, and you have to trust in that because he does command and does control the offense. He's a game manager when all said and done. Not the best, but a game manager. Or Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, or Justin Fields. Who are you taking to start this football game? You're probably, I'm going to answer it for you because I don't want to go down this long tunnel, but you still would probably turn around and say Jimmy, right? If you look at all three of their performances for the year, you'd probably, all four of those people and then three rookies, you'd still would say Jimmy's performed better than they have. So why should it be any different for Trey? And they've seen the field all year long. They've seen the field
Jimmy has performed better than they have with a normal thumb. That's why.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if he would with that one.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I've never tore my UCL.
I wouldn't want to risk that.
Yeah, I mean, it probably stopped me from doing other things, but I don't know if it stopped me from throwing a football. All right, so let's get out of this debacle. We'll see what this weekend brings, and we'll be back next week to talk about it. So into our
freaking
out section. What are you freaking out about?
NFL fans in their 30s and 40s are freaking out from this news of this past week with the passing of John Madden at 85.
Yeah.
How big was he to our childhood? He was, like I said, he's a childhood staple when we were talking. He's brought so much to the game and even to our lives by having a successful video game that we grew up with. Was, by the way, the standard of all sports video games. I feel like he really accelerated the growth of sports video games and created that empire, EA Sports. So a fantastic, visionary when it comes to video games, an amazing commentator when it comes to diagnosing. And basically what he did that was so great, Weston, he talked about football play, but in a blue collar way, so you can understand and be educated. And it just didn't make you feel dumb. It just made you felt inclusive. And let's not forget, he's also perhaps the most winningest. I think he's the winningest coach of all time from a winning percentage standpoint. He only coached for, I think, like 10 years or what have you. But I mean, I think he's like over 100 and he had 37 losses. His winning percentage is pretty up there. I think it's like 76% or what have you. So whatever he did it his way, and he did it in a fantastic method.
Yeah. Really saddening news. Like you said, I mean, my childhood is soundtracks of Madden and Summerall calling 49er versus Cowboy games, 49er versus Giant games. I just
they're
ducked in on Thanksgiving. His food takes in every game, no matter what city they were in, he knew what was the best restaurant or the best sandwich to get. Like, he was so great. And honestly, like, as great of a coach as he was, and I think he was the youngest NFL coach ever at the time that he was hired as an NFL coach. He was in his young 30s, maybe like 35, might even been younger at the time when Al Davis hired him as the head coach. But we
really need a stat guy.
Yeah, I know. His biggest contribution is what he did in the booth to my lifetime, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and how I remember him. And that's when the Madden games and everything came out, and he was just different. Like, he was just the life of it. Like, dude, he introduced the drawing on the screen, and remember talking about Gatorades buckets getting married and having Gatorade baby buckets. That's
what made him so great, Wes, because he did his way. Howard Cosell, he was the standard before. Howard Cosell was very prim and proper and professional and great voice and like whatever. Talked, amazingly, Howard Cosell. And then you have John Madden. All right, this guy over here, he's gonna pull him. Wow! Like, he's using sound effects and like onomatopoeias and stuff like that when he's like talking to you in your living room.
He was such a pioneer in helping others get their career off the ground, specifically female sportcasters and being sideline reporters and things of that nature. Like, he was just an all around, like, so funny because for as loud as he is in the booth, like, everything you see, he was just like so soft spoken, like outside of it, and just like commanded presence. I mean, dude, you and I grew up playing Madden, right? Like I owned every version of Madden. I think
I didn't get the first year. I did not get it. I definitely
so
got the second year.
I had it. I had every version because before Madden there was Joe Montana Sports Talk Football. Had that, then Madden, and like Sega. These are Sega Genesis games when we were
They
getting
are.
them. And then I think the last Madden I owned was maybe either 15 or 16, probably 15, 2015. But 2014 and 2015, I and never even took them out of the package. Like, but that's how much I felt like I owed to that franchise is I bought the games even when my video game systems were not there because I was like, I have literally owned every version of this since it's been out. Like, how do I not buy the version of it? Now the issue is at my age, if I bought Madden, I'd probably lose my job. I'd have to stop doing this with you because I would just sit in front of the screen and play all day. Avoid my wife would leave me. My kid would hate me. But yeah, man, someone who feels like he's so far removed from the game at this point in time, but like was still so relevant, so impactful. And just knowing of his passing, like football got a little worse this week. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know how else to explain it because that is a legacy figure that can never be duplicated. That is gone, and
Weston, you
that
hear
sucks.
the
That
corny
sucks a lot.
cliche. Yeah, you hear the corny cliche. He's just a football guy. That's that's
He is.
that's Madden. He's just a football guy,
Yep.
man.
Yep. I mean, there's no
So
other way to put that. So,
yeah.
John Madden, rest in peace. You will be missed, man, for sure. But your legacy will live on. I have no doubt about that. All right. So let's get out some of the sombering news, and let's talk about where I'm overreacting. Which I have joy to say that I'm overreacting in this regard, and I don't like to dunk on people, but or on teams, but I'm going to dunk on this team, and I'm going to enjoy it for a little while, and it's going to bring me bad karma, but I don't care. The Seattle Seahawks. If I'm a Seahawks fan, I'm in despair. The Seahawks actually failed to make the playoffs for the first time in the Russell Wilson era. Um, it's the first time since 2011 that Pete Carroll has finished with a losing record. So what's the problem? Sounds like 10 years of a good run. But the Legion of Boom has been long dismantled, right? And that was a backbone of this team for quite some time. There's a real possibility that in 2 weeks, the final glue pieces on both offense and defense are gone after the season, and Russell Wilson and all-pro linebacker Bobby Wagner. They traded a lot of draft capital to acquire Jamal Adams, and we've seen how well that's worked out for them. To me, the biggest concern here is obviously the potential departure of Wilson this offseason. Coming into the season, we talked about it. It was rumored that there was discourse behind the scenes and Russ could request a trade. You had a number of teams that actually looked into that potential trade. I think the Chicago Bears even announced like they were getting Russell Wilson, right? Like, and it didn't even come to fruition. But Russ struggled for a majority of the season, including missing his first game action due to injury in his entire career, and the offense just never seemed to get on track. So here's the reality in Seattle. It is probably time to blow this up. If you trade Russ in the offseason, helps you recruit some of the collateral that you've lost in the Jamal Adams trades and other moves along the way, because he's going to command a high price from a team that is quarterback needy. And then it's time to just get younger and start from scratch. And like I said, begin the rebuild. I know Seahawk fans probably don't want to hear that. I know Pete Carroll himself suggested a retool over a rebuild, but for me, it's just time to rebuild. And in a division where you have a young, soaring Arizona Cardinal team, a young, soaring LA Rams team, the former one-time beast of the NFC West could be in for some troubling times.
Yeah, I think this is the chink in the arm. This is the what was it, the straw that broke the camel's back here. This losing record, this losing season. Um, I think it's going to be a lasting impression, and I think yes, I think they need to. I think Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks are going to look at each other and say, "Hey, it was a great ride." They're going to do what they with the Lions and Stafford. I think how that all went down. You need to trade me. You're in cap hell. I don't like where our team is going. You can recoup draft picks, get cheaper, get younger. I go to a contender, and you get something for me. I think it's going to be like a cordial divorce.
I agree. And I'm sure both parties, once that conversation happens, will be fine to have this happen again. Who's going to sneeze at a 10-year run of supremacy, right? Like in the NFC, specifically in the NFC West. But all good things come to an end. It's just the way it is. Do you have another one you're freaking out about at all?
I'm going to be beating a dead horse, and I'm not a homer, but I never talk about my team usually in these types of things. But if I'm a Chargers fan, I'm freaking out. They control their own destiny so late in the season and completely embarrass themselves against a 3-11 team. Now LA needs to win out and get some help too. Not impossible, but it's just unfortunate that they're where the position they put themselves in.
Yeah. We talked about it, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's tough, especially this late in the year, just the wrong time to suffer
Weston, I
that
kind of
loss.
feel like they're a year away.
I do not subscribe to that, Lou, because I could say the same thing about the team that I'm positively freaking out in the Cincinnati Bengals, right? So thus continues the AFC roller coaster. Just a few weeks ago, they were
I
on
think we were bashing the Bengals.
yeah, they're 2-game skid. They now sit atop top of the AFC North. They're a game up on the Ravens, who have somehow found a way to lose 4 straight games, which I don't even know if like Harbaugh's ever done that. But after some tough sledding, the Bengals have won 2 straight. Burrow coming off his best game as a pro, where he threw for over 500 yards. T. Higgins coming off his best performance as a pro. Jamar Chase is getting back on tracks, had a couple good productive games in a row here. And if they can re-solidify that run game with Joe Mixon, I mean, they're going to be a problem in the playoffs for the AFC. They have a pass rush, man. Hendrickson is getting after people. Hubbard's getting after people. They play on both sides of the ball. I think this rebuild that the Bengals were going through after having the number 1 pick and drafting Joe Burrow just has happened a lot sooner than most folks would think, including myself. And I just think there's a lot to be excited about in Cincy. And I know, other pundits out there would be like, they'll probably get a, first round bounce out. They're a year too early. And I just don't subscribe to that. Like play well. They all said the 49ers were a year too early, got to the AFC, the Super Bowl, lost that Super Bowl, and look what happened the following year.
Yeah, no, I told you how good the Bengals are. I love their offense because it's multidimensional. They can run the ball, they can pass the ball. But yeah, I do think they're also a year too early. All their playmakers and the leaders on the team are like 25 years old or younger. I think you need more experience there. I think you have to go through the heartaches. Seldom does a young team like this come in and go far. So watch them go far now because I said this. But they're another team I feel like is a little year too early, but they're going to be trouble for years to come. I'm going to tell you that.
Yeah. Well, so I understand the maturity thing, especially when it comes into the playoffs, and you're looking for some savvy vets out there that have experience in the playoffs. But sometimes, man, there's nothing more dangerous than a team that's young, dumb, and full of what, because they don't know any better, right? Like they don't know any better.
Create team, right?
Exactly, and they just think, hey, I'm talented. You can't stop me, and they have that swag about them. All right,
Yeah.
so let's get into our offensive, defense, and defensive players of the week. One thing for me, Lou, is I had quite a few on both sides of the ball that were hard to deny. So maybe if you had a couple, we'll rattle off a couple each. I'm sure we'll have some duplicates here, so we can probably get through this. But a couple nice offensive and defensive performances this week.
Okay, I'm going to do a 2-for-1 special because you just alluded to the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm going to stay in Cincinnati.
So I'll cross out my number 1 real fast.
And you're probably number 3. Joe Burrow, like you said, a career day, 37 for 46, 525 yards, averaging 11.4 yards per throw, and 4 touchdowns against. Yeah, I know they're not good. They're secondary, the Ravens, but they still can give you problems. But the fact that no turnovers, that was pretty big. And he was thrown to his second-year receiver, T. Higgins, who had 12 catches, 194 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So deadly combination there.
I mean, Jamar went over 100, like a good offensive output from Cincy. And they were, as a pair, were my number one as well. I stole a little of your thunder last week, throwing in those pairs. So number 2 on my list, and it will be a number 1 for me to say, Dak Prescott, 28-39, 330, 4 TDs. What stood out to me the most in this game, though, outside of like, I mean, those are pretty impressive stats. And obviously this game was over like well before halftime, was he had 5 receivers with over 50 yards receiving and none over 100. So
Spreading that ball out.
spread the ball, right? Like, so when you're a defense, like, what do? You know what I mean? Like, how do you stop that? Like, this series, I got to take away Cooper. CD Lamb's open,
That is him being in the zone. He's not looking for specific players. He knows, he's like, okay, this defense is giving me this. I need to just
execute the play. Just execute the play, right? All right, you got others that you want to rattle off? Anybody that you're
I'll say another one real quick. Probably not your best stat line, but coming to the fact that this gentleman had 7 catches all year coming into this past weekend. Isaiah McKenzie of the Buffalo Bills, 7 catches for the whole year, comes in, drops 11 catches for 125 yards and a touchdown. Pretty impressive for a guy who just steps up.
Yeah. Had him on my list as well. I had some other obviouses, like Burkhead obviously had a game, Josh Allen had a game, Devontae had a game, but there's 2 that I want to put together that played in separate games, but to me they did the same exact thing essentially as one another, and they were dual threats for their offense. So the first, Justin Jackson, 64 yards rushing, 2 TDs, had 98 yards receiving. I mean, that's a nice solid 160 yard of offense output. In a loss, unfortunately. And then Chase Edmonds did the same thing in a loss, 56 yards rushing in a TD, 71 receiving yards. So you're talking about almost 130 yards of total offense in a loss, and like his first game action back with Connor out. And that's
Nick Chubb too.
Yeah, Chubb too.
Chubb had 17 carries, 126, a touchdown, 3 catches, 58 yards.
Yeah, I mean, when your running backs are doing that for you, like, that's nice. Like, that's an added bonus, right? Like, I know Jonathan Taylor's putting up all those sexy stats and, running for 100 yards on like 30 carries and finding the end zone a couple times. But when you can find running backs like the way that Jackson played, the way that Edmonds played, that stay on the field for all 3 downs, that's beneficial to your offense.
I agree.
Right.
I agree.
We talk about defense.
I'll defer to you. I always go first offensive, and
I'll
be a gentleman.
So very tempted, because I love my team defensive scenarios, to say Miami's D. I mean,
I know you're, because we had them before too.
Dude, 8 sacks, 2 picks, gave up 3 total points, but they played a very overwhelmed, undermanned team. Yep. In quarterback Ian Book in his first experience, like, not a fair game for Ian to go out there. And I'll tell you what, that boy took hits, got up. There were times where he was laying on that turf, and I bet he wanted to stay there, but he was like, the least I can do for this team right now is get off this turf, right? Like literally, that's what it felt like watching. So my actual number 1 guy off the scrap heap is balling out this year. Rasul Douglas.
Good for you.
5 tackles, 2 passes defensed, 2 INTs. This is not his first multiple pick game in the last couple weeks. And on a team that already boosts a first round draft pick in Eric Stokes, has had Jair Alexander on IR for a while, and just coming back, like, Rasul has filled in admirably. And I know I'm calling him out this week, but he's been balling for a few weeks.
So real quick, I'm not sure if you know the whole Rasul Douglas story, but when he came to the Packers and he got that first interception in his first game, he came from the Eagles, and he's like, it's kind of crazy. He's like, this is the first time I'm actually like learning about football and like techniques and stuff like that. He's like, the Eagles didn't teach me anything. I feel like I'm getting taught here in the Packers. So that's glaring when it comes to the Eagles when you think about that. But also, he's a quick study. He's a quick study.
Say that for sure. That's a solid find for them this year.
Yeah. So I will raise your gentleman who scored or who had 2 interceptions, and I'll raise you Micah Hyde. He had 6 tackles and 2 interceptions against the New England Patriots. Boy, I bet that felt good because after they lost to the Patriots, I think him and Poyer after that press conference got asked some stupid questions, and I'm sure this was a good redemption song from Micah Hyde.
Yeah. So I'll see your 2 INTs and raise you another 2 INTs. Anthony Barr from the Minnesota Vikings had 6 tackles in that game, 2 picks, 2 passes defensed, a QB hit. He was all over the field.
For an off the ball linebacker, I know he blitzes a lot and they use him differently.
Yeah,
but to have 2 interceptions as a linebacker is that's a 3-sack game for me.
Yes, I mean in covering, right? Like not just like, oops, this found me, right?
Yeah.
Like running down the field with a tight end or a back and making a nice play.
Or sitting in the zone. Yep.
Yeah. Reading the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
That's difficult stuff to do. That's why Fred Warner gets a lot of praise for what he does because he's so good in pass coverage as a
Leonard too.
Yeah. I mean, these guys find the ball. You got another one or?
No, I'm going to be stingy.
Wow. I'm not real stingy. I had 8 people on my list.
I have another one, but no.
All right. So we're out. So what are you watching this weekend?
Kansas City, Cincinnati. That's the best game on the ticket, I feel like. And it's just for me, entertainment factor. You got Burrow versus Mahomes. You got Hill and Kelsey versus Chase and Higgins. You got Andy Reid versus Harper from the ribs he ate the night before. What else could you want from this game?
You couldn't wait to get that one out.
Could not wait. Well, seriously, what else could you want? It's star-studded. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Should be flexed, all that. But to me, this is a potential playoff game, right? Yeah. Like this, you could see this matchup again, depending upon how these playoffs shake out. I do think it's likely that Kansas City ends up with the first round bye. But this is a potential playoff matchup, and we're getting it right before the playoffs. Like this is primetime television to me. So I agree. I had that as number 1 on my list. I also have the Rams versus the Ravens as a game that I'll keep an eye on outside of my own game, of course, because I think Baltimore badly needs to get off this skid.
Yeah, but Lamar is still...
So I have this as my note. If Lamar's not playing, this carries no sex appeal to me. But if Lamar is playing, another star-studded game. You got Lamar going up, some of the studs on the Rams defense. You got Cooper Kupp coming to town. What's he going to do to that secondary? Sonny Michel's running all over the place. Yeah. So a lot of good people there. But to me, this game is much more attractive if Lamar's playing.
I agree.
You have another?
Yeah, well, I got a topic. AFC playoff picture. There are 4 teams who are currently 9-6, 4 teams who are 8-7, vying for that 6th and 7th playoff seed. And that's not forget about also the Steelers who are 7-7-1, and the Browns and the Broncos who are 7-8. There's so many different scenarios that can happen for the 6th and 7th seed because there's literally 10 teams still vying for 2 spots.
Yeah. I'm looking at it right now. What's not good for you, though, is I look at Miami sitting at 7 and Baltimore sitting at 8, and both have tiebreakers over the Chargers due to head-to-head.
Hold on, though. Miami has a tough schedule. Tennessee, they play this week, and then they play New England.
Yeah. So I do remember that. So Miami's got a tough slate, and looks like Baltimore doesn't have an easy one going against the Rams and whoever else they got, right? So
Steelers. I think the Steelers.
You got to win. You got to win out, dude. You got to win out. That's what makes last week even more painful for both of us because we're both sitting in that same boat. I'm also looking at the Arizona-Dallas game. I think that's another potential playoff game. And what intrigues me the most is if Green Bay somehow, some way slips up against Minnesota again on Sunday night and Dallas can manage to win this game against a reeling Arizona team, Dallas jumps to the 1 seed, bro.
Wow.
And they could have a first round bye. And nobody saw that coming. Nobody saw that coming.
Dallas would need that. That would be huge for them not to have to go to Green Bay in December.
Yeah. They're not built for that. They need to play. They need to play in their house, bro. They need to play in their house right now.
Yeah.
Because their defense is not. They're
fast.
finesse. They're not physical, right? Like you got to be physical in January at a place like Lambeau.
Hey, neither the Packers defense though. They're finesse.
Yeah, but
You
they're
can run all over them.
yes, you can. Yes, you can. But it doesn't matter because Aaron Rodgers is going to get you. He's going to get you, dude. What I tell you in the beginning of the season, when he pulls all this shit in the beginning of the season, it's just a way he remotivates himself and does all this stuff. And he goes on air and he's talking about his COVID advice and yada yada yada. He does this to piss you off. He wants you to hate him because then he just goes and wins MVP, and then he's just going to go into the NFC Championship game. Like he. Brady gets a lot of credit for playing with a chip on his shoulder, but Aaron Rodgers plays with a pretty big chip on his shoulder too, still to this day. All right, our favorite segment. Let's get into the weekly pick'ems. Lou, last week.
Yeah, we're killing it, by the way, with these.
We are doing very well. Last week you were 10-6. I was 11-5. So I picked up another game. I picked up 3 games in the last 2 weeks on you.
So I'm up only by 2 games.
You're up 2 games right now. You are 96, 62, and 1. I am 94, 64, and 1. But I want to be very transparent about something.
I also have a question too, by the way.
Yeah.
Does this stop when the regular season stops?
We'll
do a playoff
on air make a friendly playoff wager.
Okay.
We'll figure out what
we'll make playoff predictions. Who wins each game?
Yeah. We'll still keep doing that. But that's a new record. That doesn't regular season is the regular season. But there's one thing that I do want to say. The Ravens game, right? Yeah, because we both had Baltimore. We picked this and did not know. We knew that Lamar was iffy, but we definitely had no idea that Huntley wasn't playing and Josh Johnson was coming in, which I do think changed things. Even though Josh Johnson actually played a pretty good game for them.
He did.
And I talked about this on Jason's fantasy show because you weren't able to be at how Baltimore is like a bunch of geniuses because they bring in quarterbacks. They don't have to change the offense. Lamar Jackson, Tyler Huntley, Josh Johnson, you can run the exact same offense so long as they know it. It's just a matter of who's a little bit more talented than the rest, right? Like that's why one's a starter versus one being a backup. So I do want to call that out to say that like, okay, that difference between you being 11-5 and me being 12-4 is sometimes we pick early in the week and we don't have all the information. Sometimes that's just the way it boils down. So, all right, let's get into this week's schedule. Let me bring back my notebook because I have to write this down to make
this is my favorite part of the show, just watching you go through this notebook and circle.
All right, so what week are we in? Week 17.
Mm-hmm.
Lou, Weston, first game up.
We'll go back and forth. I'll start one, then you start one. We go.
All right. Okay. I see what you're trying to do here. I got you. So Thursday nights,
dude,
Sunday night.
I get petty, man.
I get it, dude. I want to win too. Pride's on the line here. So first game up, I'll let you pick Atlanta at Buffalo.
Buffalo. That's it. That's all.
Yeah. I know. All right. G-Men at the Bears. I'm gonna say the Bears, just because it's away.
Bears, and I'll tell you later why.
Okay, when we hang up. Next, this is a tough one. Kansas City at Cincinnati. At Cincinnati.
Give me Kansas City.
You know what? I have to say Kansas City too, because for all that hype that I just gave them,
they're
not mature enough to beat this Chiefs team and Andy Reid just yet.
Because they're a year away.
They probably are. But again, I don't subscribe to that. We're not in the playoffs here. All right, Miami at Tennessee. Wow, I got a tough one here too.
This is very tough.
I'm going to go Tennessee because it's in Tennessee. They've had a couple extra days to recoup since they played a Thursday night prior to the holiday. They'll get some of their offensive line back that was not available due to COVID and things of that nature. So I'm gonna go Tennessee in this game.
I too am gonna go with Tennessee, and I just don't feel like You're asking me, wow, how did the Dolphins win 7 in a row? Did you see who they played?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, can we not describe? I mean, I know that you only play who's on your schedule, but we had talks like this in the beginning of the year, the first 3 or 4 weeks in the season. The Broncos, they're 3-0. The Panthers, they're 3-0. But you see who they played, and they came back to reality. I'm not saying Miami is bad. I'm just feeling that,
dude, real quick,
this is a big boy game.
Yeah, well, I also get scared away by teams that go 1-7, then 7-0, right? Big swings like that, like too much can go wrong and fall off the rails. Do you see that meme going around about the Dolphins where it had you've seen the movie the most recent version of The Longest Yard, right? Like early
Oh, what's his
2000s.
name? Yes.
And they had Brucey next to
Brucey.
Tua, and they're like, Brucey out here winning 7 straight.
It did look like him, bro.
Bro, I damn near pissed my pants when I was watching that.
Yeah,
All
that
right,
was good.
So Raiders Colts in Indy. It's your pick.
No. Oh yeah, it is my
just the Titans.
Raiders Colts.
At Colts. Carson Wentz may not play, but he probably will.
See that this is where I love
Still,
to
I don't
throw a
think
caveat.
it fucking matters.
I'm gonna say.
Remember,
Colts.
2 weeks ago I picked him as my defensive player of the week.
I'm gonna say Colts, especially if Wentz plays. But if he doesn't play, I mean, I'd like to.
It changes things. It totally changes things.
I'm not saying Wentz is an all-world beater, but damn, Ellinger from out of Texas, I mean, he ain't gonna do anything.
Taylor's gonna run all over him. I need Taylor to run all over him for my fantasy championship.
I say Colts.
All right. I got the Jags.
Who do you?
I said Colts too. I said Colts.
Okay.
Jags at New England. So I'm taking New England.
I'll take New England as well. Trying to end their like little snafu here they have.
This is the get right game for them, that's for sure. All right, Tampa Bay at the Jets. Jets.
I'll take the Bucks.
I'm taking the Bucks as well. Philadelphia at Washington.
You.
Oh, that's me.
We were doing a dramatic pause, people.
I know. Pregnant pause in sales. I'm gonna say Washington. And I don't have a reason for that other than I'm hoping you go the other route. And this is a game that I might be able to pick up a game, and secretly hoping because I need Philadelphia to lose this week.
I will go Philadelphia. I'm not happy about it. I wanted to go Washington, but this could be a game I could separate myself from you here.
Yes, you could. Rams at Ravens in Baltimore.
I'm going to say Rams.
I'm going to say the Rams too because just too much uncertainty if Lamar is playing or not. I don't think he will.
I don't think he's playing either.
Broncos at Chargers. Oh, this is me. Ooh, I have to take the big brother. I think I'm going to take Broncos on the road.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, dude, you said it. 5-6. I mean, that's what Seattle has done to the 49ers, dude.
I have to think. If I am to be a full believer that these aren't the same old Chargers.
You have to take them.
I have to take them because, and this is just not, you'd have to think by the piss poor effort against Houston and them getting a boatload of players back. Luck being the starting quarterback. Their secondary is going to be a little thin. They have 2 guys possibly out, Fuller and Callahan. It just points at like a Chargers win. Yeah. This is what they would do. They would win a game they shouldn't win and lose a game they shouldn't lose. So I'm saying Chargers.
All right. Well,
it pains me that I'm rooting for my own team.
I know. Well, I'm faced with that right now. Well, you get to go first at least. Texans at 49ers.
I'll take the Niners. I don't think there's any issue here whatsoever.
Me too. Moving on. Don't want to spend any time here. Arizona Cardinals at the Dallas Cowboys. It's
you.
me. I'm going to say Dallas. This is in Dallas, and I just think Arizona
They're
is
reeling,
on the
man.
struggle bus right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm definitely with you.
All right. Carolina at New Orleans.
Who's playing quarterback is for New Orleans?
I don't know. I honestly don't know at this point. I can tell you that I desperately need New Orleans to either lose this game or to win out. So
Carolina at New Orleans.
at New Orleans.
I'm gonna have to go New Orleans. I'm hoping one of their quarterbacks plays for that to happen. I just feel like their defense is still good. New Orleans, right?
Yeah.
They still have Kamara. As long as either Hill or the other guy, start plays. If it's the guy who played against the Dolphins, there's no chance. But I'm gonna say New Orleans.
I'm gonna say New Orleans too. Luke Kuechly is still not on. Not last I checked, is still in retirement, not coming back to stop some of the weapons. And
Sam Darnold's playing
quarterback. Yeah, so I have to go New Orleans as much as it pains me. Detroit at Seattle. I'm taking Seattle.
Wow, you picking against your boys in Detroit, huh?
Yeah, I just think like
Seattle. Yeah,
like
I don't think they can win in Seattle.
Either team has nothing to play for in Seattle. Like Russ is auditioning now. A lot of players auditioning.
This could be his send off to them.
Might be his final home game, right? So some things to consider. All right, big ticket here. Sunday night, Minnesota Vikings at the Green Bay Packers.
I have to go Packers.
I have to go Packers too.
It's hard to beat a team twice in a year.
Yes, it is. So I got Green Bay as well. And then Monday night, the Cleveland Browns at the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Ooh.
I'm going to go Cleveland.
Yeah. I'm going to go Cleveland too. They looked pretty good again. Outside of Mayfield's 4 interceptions, but they ran the ball. Their defense is good.
They were still in that game considering even all
their
that.
Their defense is really getting slept on. I feel like they're pretty damn good.
Yeah.
And I don't think you need to score a ton to beat the Steelers.
No, the only thing that gives me pause is it is most likely Ben's last home game, right? And Ben is a legend, right? Like he's probably a Hall of Fame quarterback when all is said and done.
He definitely is.
So usually there's big game send off, but wouldn't it just be so AFC North and the dog pound to ruin that for them? So I'm saying Cleveland, but I legit
yeah. I mean, the whole we talked last week. The AFC North and AFC West are the most mixed up divisions because everyone's within a game of each other.
Yeah, it's so wild. And Cleveland needs to win the game, when all said and done. I don't think even if Pittsburgh wins out. Actually, I don't think either one of them are making the playoffs, to be honest. But
they're not. They are right there, though.
Yeah, they are right there, but not mathematically eliminated yet. All right, dude. So that brings us down to the home stretch here. It is fantasy football time. Lou, this is championship week. Some of you have waited all season for this opportunity. You certainly do not want to squander it now. Lou, give me your first player who's going to help somebody win a championship this week.
Well, I'm going to have a I love me some me moment right now. Before I do so, I hope they were listening to us these last couple of weeks, because we have been on fire when it comes to fantasy football. Last couple of weeks, I told listeners to start Ronald Jones, Amon St. Brown, Antonio Brown, Rashad Penny, and Joshua Palmer. All when I told them to start, they did pretty good. And these aren't your everyday players. These are guys that you're hoping can get you a couple of points. But all those guys that we mentioned, I feel like we're doing a good public service to our listeners here.
Sure are.
So first and foremost, you mentioned it before, Sony Michel. Henderson's hurt again. I know Akers could play, but there's a rust factor there. So I fully expect Michel to get the bulk of the carries this past weekend. Even if it's against a tough Ravens defense, I still think he'll find the end zone there. And if you notice something, the Rams have changed their offensive scheme dramatically over the last 3 weeks. They are running way more than they have been prior. And Stafford's passing numbers and outputs have been going down the last 3 weeks. I feel like they're trying to become physical again and try to learn on the fly when it comes to running the ball, because they're going to need to do that against some of the teams in the NFC. For example, the Packers, or they're going to have to try to run against the Tampa Bay. So I feel like Michelle will be a benefactor here because of their change in philosophy on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I just think you can't ignore the obvious. He's just playing well, and it's not. He's not. Henderson is not going to take the game away from him. The only thing that's stopping Sony Michelle right now is, game
Henderson's hurt.
flow, or
He's
exactly
on
that's what I'm
IR.
saying,
Yeah.
right? So like, for a little while you were hesitant maybe to put him in because you're like, well, Henderson was the ever damn back. He's back. He's on IR, so nobody's stealing carries away from Sony Michelle. The only thing that's stopping Sony Michelle right now is an awkward game flow or just a bad game, right? So if he's on your roster, he has to be in. Like there should be no hesitation whatsoever. I have two guys on my list, Lou, that have been on my list for the last 2 weeks. You mentioned one of the names. I'll hold that in reserve, but again, my leading two guys, I said the last 2 weeks. So just so I'm not being redundant, I'll start with my bottom two guys, and we can go a little deeper if we need to. First up for me is going to be Devin Singletary, actually. So if you are in a spot where maybe you lost Leonard Fournette, maybe you lost Henderson and you don't have Sony Michel, you don't have handcuffs, whatever it might be, you're looking for a flex spot. Devin Singletary made me look real good last week, Lou, on Jesse's show. You saw the comment actually shouted out by the person on the bottom of the screen saying, Weston told me to start Singletary and he got me into my championship, right? Like somebody literally put that out there. And not that he's going to give you 25 points, like he's not. But if you need 10 plus from somebody, he's been a top 15 back, statistically speaking, for the last 3 weeks. He has a very, very favorable matchup against the Falcons in a game where Josh Allen should not have to be the leading rusher for this team to win. And as the Bills are making a playoff push in a game that they should mop up pretty easily and kind of being the only game in town, I just expect them to get 15 to 18 touches in this game in some capacity. He's going to catch the ball out of the backfield for you. So, I like Devin Singletary in like a PPR league to be like every bit of 15 points this week.
That's a good one. He has been trending up the last couple of weeks. I agree with you.
Who else you got?
I got KJ Osborne, wide receiver for the Minnesota Vikings. Thielen is officially out for the year, so I'm feeling good throwing Osborne in on my starting lineup. Whenever Thielen doesn't play, Osborne does pretty well. Over the last 3 games Thielen has missed, Osborne put up 14.7 points, 17.3 points, and 17.8 points. Coupled with the fact that we're going to have to play keep up with the Packers, a lot of attention will be garnered to Justin Jefferson
Yep.
and Dalvin Cook. So I fully expect Osborne getting you like maybe 70 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah. I think Osborne's going to have a good game. I'm actually going against him, so I hope he doesn't. In a similar scenario where this guy had Thielen out, putting Osborne in. But I just expect he'll put again another potential 15-point plus game from somebody, especially if they're playing catch up. For me, I'm like running back heavy this week. So my second one is Tony Pollard. I think last week, if the game flow had looked different for Dallas, right, where this game wasn't just over super, super early, he easily would have outproduced Zeke last week if they didn't throw all over them. It will be tougher sledding this week against the Cardinals, but I actually fully expect Pollard to outshine Zeke in this game. He's more explosive. I think he'll get more opportunities and more touches this week with Zeke. So this is a high risk, high reward type play, right? Because that is a committee that you're talking about. Zeke is still going to start the game at running back so long as he's healthy and nothing happens from now till then with COVID list or anything like that. But I think once game flow kicks in, you can't deny that Pollard is just so much more explosive looking than Zeke. And that Cardinals defense, specifically Budda Baker, who makes a living being in the backfield and chasing down these backs, plays at an elite speed. They need somebody to pull away and can maybe create separation. So I like this to be a big Tony Pollard game.
No, I can definitely see that too, especially if it's a high scoring game. They're going to need him catch balls out of the backfield, and I know Zeke can do it, but he's just a little sluggish and a little slower than Pollard, like you said, because Pollard's more explosive. So I think that's a good play too.
You got anybody else, or you
I got
happy
so
there?
listen. You need every point you
Save
can
it for
get.
Sunday.
No, it's all right.
Okay.
I'm set.
Okay.
So you need every point you can get. I'm going to look at a defense here. How about
Wow.
the Chicago Bears versus a Glennon or Jake Fromm led New York Giants? It's been ugly on the offensive side of the ball with the Giants in the last 4 weeks. Just that's what you're just cherry picking here.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen. I I say this about the fantasy football all the time. My defense is week to week. I don't ever draft one of the top defenses because that usually just never pans out for me, right? Like whoever's the top rated defense, very rarely do they finish like the top rated defense from a fantasy point perspective. Fantasy points is not just about like points scored against, right? They have to create turnovers. They have to be productive with those turnovers. And I play defense week to week. So even going into the championship game, I, I'm scouring the waiver wire. What defenses are available? They're probably better than mine. And you know what? The Chicago Bear defense is a solid play this week. I think Seattle against Detroit is a solid play in their final home game. They're going to want to silence the critics, even though they're playing for nothing. I don't know if Goff's playing. I don't know if Tim Boyle's playing. Don't really care which one. But yeah, I think some fantasy advice right now, and take a long, hard look at your defense. And make sure you got the one going against the right matchup, not the one that got you there. The one that's going against the right matchup is what it
That's right.
boils down
You
to.
have any more?
I do, but he's redundant. You've already even mentioned his name, and it's Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah.
I've been calling his name for weeks, actually. If you go back and listen to this, Lou's been calling his name. We've talked about it on Sundays with Jason. In my PPR leagues over the last 4 weeks, he's gone for 26, 23.5, 15, and 24. And I expect him to have similar production. He seems to find the end zone. If not, he's kind of like in that Russell Gage mode where he just seems to be like a target monster that they just drag over the middle of the field. I thought his production was going to slip a little bit last week with Boyle playing at quarterback because Goff seemed to establish some rapport, but it didn't. I mean, he put up like 24 points in my league. I think he had like 8 for 90 something and like a touchdown, right? So, you know, I expect him to continue on that path. And, you know, I think like the Sony Michel, you know, you got to have that guy in, right? But I think like the St. Browns, the Pollards, the Singletaries, those are more like if you're in a jam flex spot, like that could be the difference between winning this week and finishing second and crying to your wife about it.
Weston, are you in any finals?
I am. I'm in the finals for, believe it or not, a 4th straight year in this one league. I finished second the first year I made to the finals. I am repeat champ, and I squeaked in too. I didn't think I was gonna get in, but I got I needed Jalen Waddle to give me 17, and he went off. And I got lucky, man. This dude had James Robinson, and James Robinson went out without Achilles. No, I ended up winning by like plus 10, you know, and beating them by plus 10. But when Yahoo does those like projected throughout, I mean, there were times where this dude was like,
don't even log in until the game's over. That's
I had Tyreek Hill give me sub 4 points, Jonathan Taylor off week. Dude, I have Mike Evans and Leonard Fournette sitting on IR in this league. Herbert almost cost me this week until he got in that final touchdown and that 2-point conversion like that. But I survived going against Aaron Rodgers, Stephon Diggs, and T. Higgins combination. Between those 3 guys, that was like 80-something points, or excuse me, 90-something points that this guy put up. And I was just like, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Oh, and Chase Edmonds for me, MVP. Chase Edmonds. That's why he got his name called, bro. He was 25 points in this league. Unbelievable. It was nice. I loved every second of it. We got are we in the championship in the
so we so in the podcast fantasy league, we are in the championship. We'll see how it goes this week.
All credit goes to you. I have no insight as to who we drafted until you showed me and what we do week to week. So you get all credit for that one.
And also, I think the listeners know when you ask, "Are we in the championship?"
Yeah. No, I have no fantasy credibility.
And I'm gonna make that like a sound bite.
Just every time I talk on Jason's show, just play that.
I'm also in the championship in another league as well.
All right. Well, best of luck to you, sir. We'll rap about it on Sunday with Jason. But Lou, just a lot of fun this week, right? Between Jesse's show, and I know Jesse probably doesn't listen an hour and 20 minutes into our show, but huge shout out to him. Looking forward. Tonight was a lot of fun. Looking forward to Sunday night. But that wraps us up for our Week 16 recap. Let's go have some fun. Good luck to everybody in your fantasy football championships this weekend. If you're not in it, sorry to hear it. There's a few leagues that I'm not in it, and I'm sorry to hear it. But Lou, before we get out of here, like I always do, rely on you to let everybody know where they can find us.
You can hit us up on Instagram and Twitter at WTF Pod NFL.
Love it. Or on YouTube, We're Talking Football. Picked up a couple new subscribers this week, so shout out to y'all. Keep it coming. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. Sign up for those notifications so you know when we drop the new videos from that week's recording. But everybody have a good night, and we'll wrap again next week.